Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. It's been a while. I have been extremely busy with Solemn Tones, my company, especially because of Black Friday and all of that craziness, a lot of development as well. And so I haven't really been making any real videos. I've done some mail days, some fun just to settle down, but no real talking, discussions, points like that. And so I figured it's time to do one. Now, yes, we are still doing the How to Get Into Premium series. It's just that those videos take way more work. Like, they require actual scripting and thinking. And so because of all the craziness, I couldn't get to it yet. However, episode 3 I'll try to make sometime next week, basically once Black Friday and all of that is over. Speaking of Black Friday, if you want to buy anything Vanguard, 50cards.shop is doing a big Black Friday sale. Is it today or tomorrow? I don't know. I'm filming this on Thursday, but maybe this goes up tomorrow. So yeah, link in the description, use the code Solemn and save yourself a few extra bucks when you want to buy anything. I don't know, Clan Collection, Overdress Set 3, maybe the next Clan Collection already. I don't know what he has. He has a bunch of stuff. He also has the biggest sleeve collection I've ever seen. So for today's topic, we have Heel Guardians. As you know or don't know, Clan Collection has just come out. And everything in Clan Collection is kind of weak. There's a few cards that are like, oh, this is actually gonna, impact deck 1 or deck 2. But for the most part, all of the bosses and so forth are just, either side grades or downgrades. I don't think Clan Collection will have that much of a meta impact as far as like the cards that you ride on grade 3. The best decks still seem to be either Plon, maybe Gabriel, Spectral Duke, Luard, Prism, maybe Nitros, so nothing really changed. However, the one thing that absolutely changed is Heel Guardians. These things are crazy. If you don't know what they do, a quick refresher: if you haven't rode a grade 3 this fight yet and you guard with these, you can either give your Vanguard 10,000 power for the entire turn, or choose one of your opponent's units and -2 crit it. Another thing these heal cards can do is that if you have no damage and you place it on a rear guard circle, you can give yourself a damage, so you can turn off damage denial. So that is major. That is really, really big. This is like, you're going second, you're sitting at grade 2, your opponent is gonna blast you with some crazy attacking onslaught. You just don't die anymore. This is like getting a free defensive trigger on a big shield, or just nullifying an attack. It's like you're playing 8 PG sometimes. So it's really, really impactful. The only downside is that you lose 5k shield. And let's be real, the ability to not die in the early game is so much more powerful than that 5k shield. I don't see a future where people are thinking, should I play them? It's like, nah. They're insane. You should play them. Maybe there's like 1 or 2 decks that have some choice, some reason as to why they wouldn't max these out, but really, like, these are crazy. One thing you do have to keep in mind though is that there's massive product delays, so it's possible that people just won't get their Heel Guardians in time. Especially in Europe, this has been a thing. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, like, even right now, a lot of them haven't even shipped out yet. So if you ordered online, these companies are only now maybe getting product, or maybe tomorrow or something crazy like that. So it's possible that for the premium format, some players will actually not have them yet. V is a week later, so maybe that's fine. But we'll see. Bushiroad Rumble Online is coming up. It's basically the biggest event of the year. It's online. If you haven't registered yet, you should. I'll put a link somewhere in the description so you can actually register. Just like Springfest Online, this is basically going to be all the best players fighting each other, not being constrained by travel restrictions as you would normally have, so it's usually like a very high level event. I also noticed this in Springfest Online, like a lot of my matches were against some really, really great players that I normally wouldn't see unless at Worlds or something like that. But anyway, that's an entirely different topic. Heel Guardians. They're a big deal. I assume everyone will max them if they can, if they have access to the card. So what will this do to the formats? I think their effect on both formats is actually very similar. You can make the argument that, hey, they will maybe do something different in Premium than in V, and that's kind of true, but what we notice is that these mostly affect aggressive decks, right? Because if you are a slower deck, maybe you're like a Bermuda Triangle or a Grand Blue, these decks that really thrive way later down in the game, unless you're playing like aggro Nitros or something, but like generally these decks are slow. If you're playing a deck like that, you don't really care that much about your opponent heal guarding you. Their heal guards are no longer live when your big turns are happening. But if you're an aggro deck, you really care about heal guards. Like the people who were going crazy with Anger Blader, just trying to do the ride up and Anger Bladering, those are now hurting, you know, that deck is significantly weaker because of their release. Obviously you can say, oh, but now they can use Counter Blast because these heal guards can also add damage to you. So, you know, they can't be damage denied anymore, but who's really keeping Anger Blader at 0 these days? Like, overall, aggro decks are the ones impacted by these heal guards. And most aggro decks in Premium rely purely on V cards. V cards have so much more value and aggression in the early game than any G card could ever give you, that it's like, if you're playing an aggro deck, you're probably playing a V or a V plus deck, which means that the impact of heal guards is going to be very similar in both formats. Obviously in Premium you don't have the downside of the 15k shield because you have G Guardians, but still, I think when you try to consider heal guard impact, it's going to be mostly the same in the two formats. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think first of all, greedy aggro decks that, you know, have their aggro turn and then just flop over and die and have nothing else are kind of going to fall off. Of course, it's hard to predict what Premium is going to look like because we just had the ban list and so a lot of things changed. But a lot of like the earlier greedy decks no longer get away with like, oh, I'm going to poke him for 9k a bunch of times. Like, that feels over. Because if you're gonna try to do some crazy aggro rush strategy, and once you fail to kill them, you then have no hand, well, you're now relying on not only them not getting defensive triggers, you're also relying on them not having the heal guard. And that's like a really tall order. I don't think people will try to rely on those sacky strategies anymore. So if you're gonna play an aggro deck, there's two things you can do. Either it has some ways to build hand so that if your aggro push fails, you still have something left. Or your aggro deck needs to consistently hit over the heal guardian amounts. But again, even if that's the case, you're still relying on them not hitting defensively. So I think the first option, actually aggro decks which do have hand, are gonna have more value, let's say, from heal guardians existing. So then I'm thinking of something like Tachi right now. Tachi tends to have a lot of attacks, but they also tend to, you know, get some cards back. That doesn't mean I'm saying Tachi is gonna like top everything or anything like that. I'm more so saying that they are one of the decks that isn't as impacted by heal guardians unless you were a pure greed Anger Blader build. Now, aggro being stopped somewhat by heal guards is pretty obvious. I don't think I would have had to make this video for that. I think a more interesting idea is actually that there's decks out there that benefit from heal guards without necessarily directly benefiting from this. So what do I mean by this? Let's say something like Luard. For the longest time, if you were playing something like Prism versus Luard, the Prism player would call all these units early and start bashing them quickly, because if Luard got to a very long game, it would beat Prism. Like, Luard scales out of control. They keep making new force markers, they keep on doing the crazy attacks, they keep on drawing, and Prism kind of just stays the same. You know, sure, with a write-up you get one extra force marker, but that's nothing compared to what Luard does. And so Prism needed to win early. They needed to bash on turn 1 and 2 already, just to get Luard on high enough damage that they could then win quickly enough so Luard couldn't reach their crazy amount of force markers. Suddenly, Luard now has one more tool in their toolbox to stop that rush from happening. A similar story exists for maybe Spectral Duke. Suddenly Spectral Duke can stop some of the early rush and get to that later game where, you know, the extra Excel markers and everything that they're able to do gets better and better and better. So I feel like decks that scale well into the late game are passively benefiting from heal guards despite not being aggro or anti-aggro or anything like that. Now, another obvious one is that Gabriel benefits from this. If everyone is going to start running heal guards, then they no longer have 20k shields to stop Hamiel. And so these two little predictions, let's say, we're already seeing them play out in Japan. If you look at WGP, the things that were topping in V was Spectral Duke, Gabriel, and then also Plon. Japan seems to like their Plon. So you're already noticing like, hey, this is actually playing out. Now, one thing we do have to keep in mind when looking at these WGP results is that Japan for some reason doesn't play Prism, or barely plays Prism. In Springfest Online, we had Prisms, you know, dominating V. They didn't win every event or anything like that, but the top 8s were just all Prism. And so it'll be interesting to see if our meta shifts in V to look more like Japan's, or that it's literally a regional difference in what people choose to play. In terms of Premium, again, it's super hard to predict. The format is still very, very wide open. There's a few decks that look better than others. There's still so many decks that do such scary things that you need to be afraid of that it's hard to say how heal guards will actually impact the format. We know they're good, like they're incredibly strong, but we don't know what the final meta is gonna look like. Especially because I feel like there's a lot of asymmetry. We didn't have any events anymore. Oh, Japan doesn't have many premium events. And so everyone's kind of like testing in their own little circles, trying to figure out the meta. And so we have no results to go off. So we're all kind of going into BRO blind with our own assumptions without any clue as to what other people will be bringing. Like right now, if you look at what a top 8 in BRO Premium will look like, I think I know what the best decks are. And I'm not even willing to share it right now. Daddy needs a Brandwin promo. Despite that assumption of knowledge, it is entirely possible that the entire playing field will be playing entirely different decks and still do incredibly well. Because the difference between what I think is the best deck and the second best deck and the third best deck, and how those play into matchups that I think are gonna happen, but matchups that might be happening, is so big, it's a real problem. Like, testing for BRO Premium right now is borderline impossible because we literally have no clue what people are bringing. You can tell me, oh, it's obvious, they're gonna play this, this, and that. And I can say, yeah, is that obvious? Actually, I think they're gonna play this, this, and that. So you can't build for anything because you don't know what people are playing. And it's just stuff. Now, one final thing that I really, really like about Heal Guardians, and this is maybe one of the least obvious talking points, that is how they benefit better players. What do I mean by that? Essentially, V previously had a lot of, oh, my opponent rode up and he got a little lucky and I didn't get my defensive trigger, so I died. And there was nothing you could do about that. You didn't even get to play the game. It was just your opponent goes, get to critical trigger, and boom, it was over. Now, you have one more tool to not get randomly sacked out of the game. And I do really like that. I'm thinking back to all of the tournaments where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going pretty well. I'm going 5-0 right now. I'm gonna sit in front of someone. They call down their entire hand, start bashing. I go, oops, I don't have enough shield, and I go to 6 damage before I even ride up. That feels awful. Like, and it's not like it was some great strategy that they were employing, or it was not like I was doing some crazy misplay. It's literally like, what are you gonna do? They bashed your skull in, you didn't get defensives, your hand was kinda shit, you never got time to stabilize. Because of heal guards, you can now stop that. You're not gonna get sacked out of a game as easily anymore. And so I really like that. The random glory maelstrom ride up bullshit, the random crit for a game bullshit. It can still happen, of course, but it's again one more tool to not have it happen, which I really appreciate. So I hope you found this interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Again, be sure to enter BRO, and if there's anything you want from 50cards.shop, use the code Solemn. The Black Friday sale is going on right now. I will see you soon. Ciao.